Astalon, Tears of the Earth is a traditional Metroidvania with a few bold ideas of its own. It nails all of the fundamentals. Exploration feels rewarding, it has a plethora of power-ups and upgrades, and the map design is some of the best I've seen in a while. And while it's more important than ever to stand out from the crowd in a genre that's saturated with incredible games, Astalon falters the most with the execution of its unique ideas. You swap between controlling 3 different heroes, a knight, an archer, and a mage. Kayuli, the archer, has the most range of the trio, and she can perform wall kicks to gain extra height. Arias is your standard sword fighter, and can break blue vines, reflect projectiles, and dash. The group is led by Algus, a mage whose spells can travel through walls and activate switches. Perhaps the best part about this swapping mechanic is how well it's supported by the game's narrative. You're treated to some fireside discussions amongst the trio whenever you rest at a campfire. These moments help you connect with each of the characters and give better insight into each of their motives for undertaking this journey. Some of their conversations are pretty funny too. Algus keeps talking about his cook hole for some reason. It's a funny joke the first time, but then it starts to become the punchline for every other cutscene where you're resting. I suspect the game ran out of pre-programmed conversations, so it kept repeating the last one, but maybe Algus just really wants us to know about his dark cook hole. The group dynamic works well, but playing as a trio does start to get tiresome, as you'll need to travel back to a campfire in order to switch characters. Just as this mechanic starts to overstay its welcome a few hours in, you find an upgrade that lets you switch characters on the fly. This was a huge relief, and it made exploration some of the most fun I've had in a Metroidvania, and I finally felt like I could utilize each character's specialties to their fullest in combat, instead of just sticking with whoever I used to solve the last puzzle. The game has a massive map to explore, full of locked doors, optional side paths, and hidden upgrades. Combing this map for secrets was by far my favorite part of the game, and every upgrade felt crucial because dying means going all the way back to the tower's entrance. That's right, whether you're 5 minutes into the game or 5 hours, you'll be respawning in the exact same room every time you die. Alongside the character swapping, this mechanic is what sets Astalon apart from other Metroidvanias, and although this can get tedious, the game smooths out this frustration with its upgrade system and stellar level design. As it turns out, Algus has made a deal with the devil. Epimetheus won't let Algus die until he upholds his end of the bargain, so he'll sell you some permanent upgrades and then send you back on your way. You can spend money found in the tower to increase your health, power, and attack speed, as well as purchase new quirks and abilities for each character. This made death less of an annoyance for me, as I was excited to spend my orbs and try out my buffed up characters in just one more attempt. This creates an addicting gameplay loop of exploring the tower, gathering orbs, dying, and then upgrading your team. It reminded me a little bit of roguelikes such as Rogue Legacy, minus all the procedural generation of course, because I always felt like I was progressing even when I was dying. As in all good Metroidvanias, I felt like an unstoppable badass by the end of the game. I do wish that the game was a little less vague about what you were buying. Astalon really likes to lean into that old school style of not really telling you anything. You can purchase knowledge, which gives items more helpful descriptions, but this still didn't help me figure out what I'd be purchasing before spending my hard-earned orbs. It didn't take long for me to pull out a guide and look up what the items did for myself. I could also see the shop becoming a little grindy for some people. I was lucky enough to stumble across the Amulet of Soul early on in my playthrough, which doubles the amount of money that you find, so I personally didn't have to grind at all. But if I hadn't been so lucky, Epimetheus's increasing prices would have probably killed my momentum and compelled me to grind for orbs. After exiting the shop, you'll be resurrected at the tower's entrance, which means you'll have to make your way all the way back to the spot you died at. This isn't as bad as it sounds, due to some excellent level design. You'll constantly be opening up shortcuts and new paths to get back to where you died as quickly as possible. It reminded me a little of Dark Souls level design, in which you'd often find a ladder to kick down or an elevator to unlock to make backtracking a little less painful. There's also an elevator that I'm pretty sure was designed by Willy Wonka. It sits just beyond the tower's entrance, and it can quickly take you back to any other floor you've been to. There was nothing quite like the sigh of relief once I finally made it to the end of an area and unlocked a new elevator room. Thankfully, the developers had some sense and didn't feel the need to shoehorn in that gimmick where you need to collect your stuff again at the spot you died, lest you lose it permanently. Instead, one upgrade actually causes a health refill to spawn at your death point, and it can even fill your health past its max amount. This makes backtracking much more bearable. There were a few segments where my health would be whittled down to almost nothing by the time I made it back to where I died. By letting me refill some of my health, it gave me a chance to push on just a bit farther before my next death. The game is at its best once you can freely swap between the main trio, and start to unlock more methods of fast travel. However, towards the end of the game, you can unlock 2 additional characters that I could have done without. They were a little too gimmicky for my tastes, and I ignored them almost entirely, except for the few puzzles that demanded their abilities. This wouldn't be a problem if I could just forget that they existed, but now they were polluting my character pool. With 3 characters, it's pretty simple. You press the button, not who you wanted, you press it again. Cycling through 5 characters is far more cumbersome, especially since it messed with the character ordering that had been ingrained in my memory up to that point. They don't really add much in terms of story either. Aside from the first time you meet them, they'll just kind of chill in the background of the campfire scenes without contributing any dialogue of their own. It felt like the core team functioned much better as a tightly knit trio of heroes. Overall, Astalon has all of the high points of a good Metroidvania. Exploration feels rewarding, and there's a tremendous sense of progression as you level up your characters and find stat bonuses and new abilities. Because of how the game handles death, uncovering a new shortcut or fast travel point has never been more satisfying. Oh, and it also features some exquisite background design, including this work of art, and perhaps the judgiest frog statue that I've ever seen. Unfortunately, it has some of the genre's low points as well. Enemies respawn as soon as you leave the room, which isn't uncommon for games like this, but it's particularly irksome here because of how often you'll bounce back and forth between rooms. Astalon is often a little too abstruse. If you aren't lucky enough to stumble across that item that doubles your orbs, or the item that lets you kill ghost enemies, you'll probably be in for a frustrating time. Likewise, Epimetheus is supremely unhelpful when it comes to telling you what his items do. For these instances, I wouldn't feel too much shame in referring to a guide. And as impressive as the level design is, there are times in which it isn't enough to prevent the backtracking from getting tiresome. I think the game would have really benefited from an upgrade or accessibility option that made death less punishing, or added more fast travel points. As a general rule, I think if killing myself is the fastest way to get somewhere, there's probably some room for improvement. Minor frustrations aside, Astalon provides a world that's teeming with secret rooms and optional side paths that should keep you busy for a good dozen hours. The exploration and level design alone make this a game that every challenge-seeking Metroidvania fan should delve into.